I I don't know what to say to add to what Mike just shared, but I'll try. My name is Jiby. I am from Kochi. I was born in Ernakulam, raised for a bit in Abu Dhabi, where I was in the same space as my wife for many years, but never met her. We were in the same Sunday school, VBS classes, but we were very good. So she didn't look at boys, I didn't look at girls. But lo and behold, 20 years later, we are married. That's my wife, Gina. We've been married a year and 4 months almost, and we are expecting our first baby in March. We serve with Grace City Church in Kochi, and we are very glad to be here this weekend. This week we're here on the occasion of a friend's engagement as well. I don't have much planned. This was short notice, but here we go. So at the end of The Hobbit, which is the first book, if you get into the Lord of the Rings trilogy, Bilbo Baggins, who's the main character, the protagonist of the story, he's come to the end of his grand, long journey, and he stands on his doorstep in front of this hobbit hole, and he's looking at his mentor throughout the whole journey, Gandalf. And Gandalf says, "You are a very fine person, Mr. Baggins, and I'm very fond of you. But you are only quite a little fellow in a wide world after all." And Bilbo laughed. He said, "Thank goodness," and handed him a tobacco jar. And that's how the story concludes. Of the many things that I've had the privilege of reading, that for me is the first one that hit a nerve. Thank goodness that I am only quite a little fellow in a big, wide world after all. In the world that God is writing and is continuing to write, we are merely quite little fellows, right? But there is a journey to be had, and stories play a pivotal role in shaping that journey, in making that journey fun, making that journey not just about a list of do's and don'ts or a list of things to get done, steps to cross, or milestones to achieve, but so much more. Right? I did not grow up reading Tolkien or Lewis. I wish I did, but I did grow up reading, and that's because of my parents. It was very important to Appa and Mama that I read, and so they would read whatever stories they could get a hand on. So I grew up on Enid Blyton and the Famous Five and the Greedy Rabbit and simple little stories like that. Eventually they upgraded to missionary stories of Hudson Taylor and Jim Elliot, and really there was no going back from there. As soon as I entered the world of Christian men and their stories, I really wasn't able to settle for anything else. And probably that was the setup for Lewis and Tolkien in my life. I am not sure where I've read this, but I'm pretty sure I'm borrowing it from Lewis, and he has this line that says, "Truth is corrupted by perspective." Again, I'm not sure where I'm picking that up from. In the divine story that God is writing, there is such a thing as the truth. Okay? There is a true story, a true myth. But our perspectives growing in this world, corrupted by sin, affected by sin around us, in us, it's often that truth is going to be corrupted by our perspective. Right? So I want to introduce reading to you and commend reading to you as a way to combat that, as a way to fight the corruption of our perspectives. So I want to leave two things with you. It's interesting that Pastor Mike went to Hebrews 12. I was thinking of opening with Hebrews 11. Hebrews 11, 1-3 reads, "Now faith is the assurance of things hoped for, the conviction of things not seen. For by it, what is it? The assurance of things hoped for, the conviction of things not seen. By it, the men of old gained approval. By faith, we understand that the worlds were prepared by the word of God, so that what is seen was not made out of things which are visible. So, truth is corrupted by perspective, and I commend reading to you, because reading is what will stoke your imagination first, right? Reading is what will stoke your imagination. Now, when I say imagination, often we think of fiction and fairy tales and just leave it to the realm of children. That's child's business. That's why we use the phrase, that's just your imagination. But really, if you think about it, imagination is so much more than just child's play. Imagination is simply the capacity by which we can image anything that's not immediately visible. That's what imagination is, right? So when someone asks you the question, hey, what would you like to have for dinner tonight? Your imagination has already been stoked. You can see something. You can image something that's not immediately visible, right? Or if I asked the married men here, what color are your wife's eyes? You're immediately imagining her face, assuming you're not looking directly at her, which would be true for me and Pastor Mike maybe right now. But as soon as someone someone asks you a probing question of which the answer is not immediately visible, it stokes your imagination. And I am commending reading to you as the way to stoke your imagination. It's not about what is unreal or fantastic, as we like to say about Tolkien and Lewis and many authors who've written fiction. It's imaging things that are real but not visible. We like to use the illustration of Isaac Newton watching the apple fall and say, well, apples have fallen many times, but only Newton observed what was going on, and voila, he discovers gravity, right? What did he see? He saw the apple falling, but he also saw one step beyond. Why is that apple falling? See, imagination is actually now pivotal to science. It's pivotal not just to the world of stories, it's not just child's play. It's actually very important in the world of science too. It's simply the capacity to image what is not immediately visible. And I'm going to contend that adult imagination will struggle to relate to the true God, whom we see in 1 Timothy 6, is whom no one has ever seen or can see. When Moses tells the people to tell their next generation, it is because of what the Lord did for me when I came out of Egypt. Exodus 13. What do you mean, me? What's the second generation going to do? Well, they weren't there. They're supposed to imagine that they were there and pass it on. See the idea? He's calling them to use their imagination, to put themselves in the Exodus story, make it their own, pass it on. A darkened imagination will struggle to grasp the command in Colossians 3. Set your minds on things that are above. Is it a calling to crane our necks and look at the sky? Set your mind on things above. No. So, when Paul tells us to fix our eyes on what is unseen, 2 Corinthians 4:18, it's actually our imagination that must respond. Or, take one of the most frequent biblical commands. Remember. That's stoking our imagination. Well, the flip side is also true. How many times as you read through the history of Israel in Judges and 1 Samuel, do we come across the refrain, they forgot? That would be a failure of imagination. So first, I want to commend reading to you as imagination that reorients us, or I would say orients us to truth. If truth is corrupted by our own perspective, our own frame, our own frailties, our own limitations, reading as imagination is what orients us to truth, the divine story of God. Right? And second, and I would commend reading to you as investment. Investment for what? A man once boasted to C.S. Lewis, and he said he had no time for fiction. He said, life is too short. And Lewis replied, you're right, life is too short. It's too short not to read fiction. For fiction is the only place where a short life may be lengthened into 1,000 years. They are the shortest road to longest truths. Stories actually don't waste our time, they invest it. And they invest it well. Because the world of story is not a playground where you're like, oh, that's nice, let me play with that. Oh, that's nice, let me enjoy it. It's actually an armory. A good story, and I believe all good stories are downstream from the great story, which is the biblical story, is actually an armory for the Christian. We will and we are facing all sorts of dragons. Lust, pride, sloth, despair in this life. And when you do, you will need more than proof text. You will need more than just to quote Matthew 5:8. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. Immediately you're going into the world of imagination. I want to leave two examples with you, and these two are just like the Tolkien one that I read at the start. Have been very influential in my life, and both of them come from Narnia. In the midpoint of Prince Caspian, there is a scene where the good guys, let's just call them that, and when you guys read the book, you will figure out who the good guys are. They are cornered. They're actually not cornered. They are surrounded. They are cut off from supplies. They are outnumbered, and they are losing hope. The good guys include Caspian, of course. He's the king. He's the prince. And a bunch of people, allies with him. One of whom is Trumpkin. Trumpkin, the dwarf, actually does not believe in anything Narnian. He thinks Aslan is a myth. He thinks the 4 heaven-sea kings and queens are only fairy tales, because the story of Prince Caspian happens thousands of years after, 1,200 plus years after the story of the 4 children. And he doesn't believe in any of the artifacts, the horn or anything. Okay? And so as Caspian blows the horn to get Aslan's help, or at least the children's help, he doesn't believe it. He doesn't believe any of it is going to work. But it is true, they are running out of supplies. They are losing hope, they are outnumbered, and they are starving. And Caspian just wants to send someone, 1 or 2 people, to sneak past their surrounding enemies, get to the palace, and see if the horn worked. Now, imagine, Trumpkin does not believe him. But one of the guys that Caspian asks, hey, will you go? Says no. And Trumpkin responds, looking at that character, which you will figure out when you read the story. Is that how you speak to the king? He says. Send me. Sir, I'll go. Trumpkin is actually surprised. Caspian is actually surprised. And so he looks at Trumpkin and says, but I thought you didn't believe in the horn, Trumpkin. And Trumpkin goes, no more I do, Your Majesty. But what's that got to do with it? I might as well die on a wild goose chase as die here. You are my king. I know the difference between giving advice and taking orders. You've had my advice. Now it's time for orders. This actually helped a lot when trying to contend with my mother on many things as a teenage boy. I was looking and saying, no, we should do it this way, we should do it that way. And at the end of the day, she would issue a command, to which I knew that my father's strong refrain was, if your mother says something, do it. It doesn't matter if you disagree with her. Hey, that's what he's doing. Rarely did I agree with my mom about the best way to finish something at home. Rarely. Because I had so many opinions and so many questions. And always thought that that doesn't make any sense. But hey, equipment for obedience. Simple faith, simple obedience, straightforward. Or consider this scene, and it's again Lewis, and this is from The Lion and the Witch in the Wardrobe. I've read this line many times, and until recently, when we were reading it together, I didn't really understand what Lewis was doing. Peter did not feel very brave, he says. Indeed, he felt he was going to be sick. This is at the scene of his first battle. But that made no difference to what he had to do. And that was just before Peter plunged his sword into Morgrim's heart. Morgrim is the wolf, the captain of the White Witch's army. So, when I commend reading to you, I'm not commending these as decorations that look really good in a different world. They are not decorations of the faith. They are rehearsals for the real war of the Christian life. The world of stories is not a playground, it's an armory. It's an armory for us to invest in and pick up tools, pick up skills, pick up ideas, pick up ways to manage or ways to go about life, live the story of life as God intends it. This is all together summed up in what I think reading is. Reading is simply the practice of seeing the world through someone else's eye. And the better the story, the more it is going to align you with the truth, which is often corrupted by our perspective. So, I commend stories to you as imagination and as investments. Good stories as imagination will orient us to truth. Good stories as investment will equip us to live truly. That's my session.